So for the participation activity and actually the assignment this week, we want to have you set up an example project that does user authentication using Google's Firebase system again. So you're going to download this project from GitHub. So again, as normal, if you're having trouble building this file, you should be able to go into Tools, Android, and Sync project with Gradle. It should be able to build, but there probably will have initial errors in the imports of the main activity here until we get things set up. Okay, and we also are going to have to, we may be deleting this file, and we'll talk about that in a sec. So make sure your project is connected up to Firebase using the Firebase Assistant Tools Firebase, and we're going to do Firebase Authentication. So again, here we're going to go Tools, Firebase. Over here on the left, it'll pop up our Firebase set of tools. Last time we looked at real-time database, but this time we're going to do authentication. So we're just going to enable that. So we're going to connect to the Firebase database. And again, this is where you might run into some trouble. Like here, I get a warning that I can't configure this, and it tells me where the error is. There's this Google services.json file, and I can't delete it. So I'm just going to go and delete that. So here it is. I'm just going to delete that file. Oops, not. Try that again. I'm going to delete that whole file. And then reconnect to the database. It wants to know what projects you want to store this at. You can certainly, you probably won't have any projects listed here, so you want to probably create a new Firebase project. I'll leave that as is. Connect to Firebase here. And then it should show in a sec a little green arrow that it's connected to Firebase. Okay, after about 30 seconds it said connected to Firebase here. Now I'm going to set up Firebase authentication to the app. This will add some build information to your files. So just accept those changes and let it rebuild. You'll see down at the bottom here it's rebuilding things. Now I notice in this older version, so first dependencies are all set up for our Firebase, so we should be set now. I notice there are problems with this older. We used to have to include these import files. We don't have to include them anymore, so I'm just going to delete those. They're all grayed out, meaning they're not used anyway, so I'm just going to delete those. Okay, so we've set up our Firebase here, so it's tied to authentication. Now we're going to go to the Firebase console and enable both email and password and Google sign-in methods. So going back to Firebase console, here, let's just follow this link so you can see that. So following this link, it'll get you to Firebase. You should be able to find your project here. We just created a new one called Part 12 Firebase Authentication. That's what at least mine was called. So, and you probably just one project there. So there's my project. I'm going to go into settings. I'd minimize the shelf. So I'm going to go to authentication here. And we're going to set up the sign-in method for this. And we're going to use, we're going to enable email password. So we're going to enable that. We're just going to use the email password. We're going to not do this part here. Save that. And also just Google, so they can just sign in with their Google names. Now there's other ones you can set up, but we're just going to start with these. So we're going to enable the Google connection information here and save that. Okay. So we've set up both email password and Google sign-in information. Now we're going to follow this assistant here on how to set up authentication in our project. This walks you through how to set up authentication in your project. So the first thing it says, add Firebase authentication to your file. It should be in your build.gradle file. This should have been done for you when you went through the wizard. So again, if you go under Gradle scripts, this build.gradle says module level app. There's another build.gradle. Sometimes it's at a higher level, but you just want that one. If I open up that, if I go down to dependencies, it should have this implement Google Firebase Authentication. Now this one's 11.0.4. So again, so I think we're okay with that. So I think we can ignore this. I'll come back to this if we have some problems. Okay, now we're going to create an authentication state. We need an authentication variable for doing all of our authentication in our code. So we're going to define a private variable called this authentication. So I'm going to put that in our code. So again, in our main activity here, we're going to want to declare that. We're going to use that throughout our classes. So I'm going to, or all our methods. So I'm just going to add it up here. And I do want to import this. Again, remember we removed some of these imports. Now we'll add back, I think we'll add back the right ones here. So I'm just going to hit Alt Enter and import that class, and it'll have added it up here for us. And I think it's slightly updating which one it's using here. So that's why I deleted them before. Now we'll add them back as we need it easily enough. Okay. Now in our onCreate method, we need to initialize this. We need to call this kind of factory to get the instance of this. So back in our class, here's our onCreate method. We're setting up all of our buttons and things like this. This is a good spot to also do this. Set up our authentication access. Similar, if you remember when we did our database, we set up our reference to our database here. We got a reference to the database at this point. Okay. We also have to do some initialization. When our app starts, we have to let it know that it's doing authentication, so it knows not to put the starting screen until users are authenticated. So we need to set up this on start method here. So again, we're just going to copy that code here. And go over here to and set up an on start method. And again, we're going to have to do some Alt Enters here to import these classes. Okay, notice I put the onStart inside this onCreate class. It's got to be in its own class. So I'm going to copy that out here. Right now I do have the button listeners in there, that's fine. But again, I'm going to go down here to these methods here. We have a sign in, sign out, and create account class. It's empty here. I'm going to add the on start here. It also has an update UI object here. I'm going to comment that out for now. So in our onStart method, we're going to comment out this user interface update, and we're just going to put the user interface update right in here. Save us a method. If you want, you can put this in a separate method, but I'm just going to try to reduce the number of methods we have around. So again, an onStart, just like they showed us in the example, we're going to call the parent onStart class. We're going to check for the Firebase if the current user is logged in. So right when the app starts, we're going to check if the current user is logged in. That'll set this current user to null if the user isn't logged in, or an ID, or the user if it is. So then we're just going to check if the current user, if it's not null, then the user is signed in. And then we're just going to, I'm going to log something out. We're going to pop up a toast message, and we're going to set the text view, the status view on our layout field here. The status is just going to say logged in or signed in. And if the user is not, if this is null, then we're going to log it to the log file. We're going to pop up a toast message, and then we're going to also change the status. So those things will be, and you can just take that code right from here and do this. When we're doing this code from Google, it they do a lot of these log statements that show up in the logs, and it'll have a tag there. I would suggest change that tag to something like CIS 3334, or put your last name there, something like that. When you run your things, the log will pop up and you can search that. Okay, so next we're going to just follow along here. The next step is to create a couple methods, a create account method, which will allow users to create an account with a username and password. So again, we're going to create a method called create account and set that up. So we've got a create account method already here, just a blank template that you can put this code in. It has two parameters, an email and a string. So we can just go out and take this code, copy it, and put it into that create account method. So let's go through and check these errors. So authentication result, it should be an import. We should be able to do that, import the class, and should add the import up at the top here for us. Similarly, task, we should be able to import. Again, with this tag, we're going to just change this to something like CIS 3334 when we're doing these. And again, you can also just define a tag string constant above and set it equal to this also if you want. This update UI, we'll just put in the code right here to update the UI, so we won't have to worry about that. Import this class, and similarly for this. So for this one, what they're saying is that we should be having another activity where we're going to have the user sign in with email and password. We're actually using the current activity for that. So we have the user and password here. So that's just this activity. So this is just this context, this is toast messages is popping up the main activity. So similar to up here, we can just say main activity and pop up the toast message in our main activity here. Okay, so we've created the create account method. We've used the main activity rather than this one, and we're putting it in there. We modified this code. Now it said add a form to register the new user with their email and password. So we should be collecting that information and call this method when it is submitted. So similarly, so we're going to do that. If we go into our code, we'll see if we scroll up, we already have a button here for this create user button and a normal sign in. And both of these will use this email password sort of stuff. So again, when we click the create listener create account methods, we want to create the account and pass in the email and the password as strings to that. So that should be calling this create account method for us from our user interface. So we already have that set up here. So again, we're forms all set up, and we're calling this method from within our user interface when we click that. So that's when if we create an account. How about if we already have an account and we just want to sign in? So again, we're going to create a sign in method, and we'll put this code there. So similarly here, we've got I'm just going to minimize some of these methods. So we have a sign in method here, and we're going to post that code there. So we're going to copy this code and put it in our sign in method. And fix some of these errors. So again, I changed the tag in the log methods. I commented out this update user interface stuff. Oh, and I also want to change this main activity to be the main activity here. So rather than email activity, we're just using this one activity for this to set it up. So they should be able to sign in. It should check. It will try to get them using the authentication variable or authority we have set up. It should try to sign them in with an email and password they have, and then it'll check if they're signed in and passwords. Where do we have this update UI? This also add update the status variable. If you remember early on, we did that. I have that here. We updated the text view here. Let's do that for it. You can kind of see there why they're moving this. Some of this stuff is repeated code again and again. So you can, again, move this out into another variable, another routine, and do it that way also. And let's see. So again, whenever they create a user account or try to log in, sign in, not just the first time, but every time, we're going to check and we're going to log it and post a view. We can also pop up a toast message if we want to show that it was successful. Okay, so that's our sign in form. We did our sign in method. Here, and we paste that code in there, and again we have to make sure when we click our button we call that form. So if we go up here, it should be already set up. When we click our button for our normal sign in, it should call the sign in method below with this sort of stuff. So that'll go down here and run our sign in method and sign them in. So that should be set up. So this talks a little bit more about some of the other things you can do as far as access user information. We're not going to worry about that right now in this. We can look at one more thing if we want, and that's signing out. We don't if we want, because again in our method will be we have a sign out button because we want to test this in multiple ways. We want to make sure that's working. So in the sign out method, you just have to call authentication.signout to sign out for this. Okay, so that should get you up and running with signing in. So we're going to run this. Now what we should be able to do is log in and out. One thing you might want to check is your Firebase console and get that up. So again, I'm at my Firebase console. I've gone into my project here under authentication. This is the list of users who've used the project, who have created accounts on it, and right now it's blank. No users have created any accounts, but this should fill up as I create users. So let's see. So if I go to my app here, I'm going to enter test one.css.edu. Oops. And the password is just going to maybe be test1. And again, I'm showing the passwords here. We're not, there is a field here that would put stars there and everything, but I'm just, for debugging purposes, we'll leave it here. And I'm going to hit the create user account. Should create users, and now we'll see. Now we got an authentication fail down there. So something wrong with authentication. So let's go see if what's that. So again, sometimes with debugging here, you might want to go into the event log. So there should be an event log button here that you can bring it up. Actually, you want logcat up here to be displayed. In logcat, we should see all the log messages are displayed, especially when we're in Devost. Now there's different levels of logging. Right now it's displaying all. This is where I'm running it, and this is the application, so generally I want to keep those set as such. So I can scroll through and see the logs that I'm creating here, and some information about it. Again, if I want to filter those, I can just filter those here. I can just type in a value, a string, and filter them so it only shows like the CIS 3334 ones and not the other ones if I want. So I can do some filtering if I want. So I can go in here and see the error message here, create user with email failure. The email address is badly formatted, so I'll have to check that out. So I had a space at the beginning of email address, so I've changed that, and now we'll create the user again. Authentication failed. Let's see, what's my newest log message? Given password is invalid. Password should be at least 6 letters here. So test 111. Sign in again. So now it says sign in. I don't know if you noticed that the status was changed to sign out right away, because when we started this, the on start method already checked and changed that to signed out. Now that I've signed in, it is saying signed in. So that's good. That means I'm signed in here to this account. I can sign out, and it should change this to sign out. Oops, I don't think we updated that in the sign out method, so we should do that. So I forgot to, when I do the sign out, I want to also add this. Rerun this. So again, I can try to log in again. stu.css.edu. I can create the user. I can be signed in. Now I should be able to check and look at my project. Add or hit refresh the screen, but here's my users that have and their user IDs that were created, so I can see that those users have been created. Similarly, I should be able to do sign out and not just create a user, but also sign in with the user. So I should be able to sign in with user 1 and type in user 1 password and just do a normal login, and I should be signed in with that user for us. Okay, that gets through the basics of this. So for the participation ones, you should have that start. I think you'll have everything more normal. Login, create user, and sign out button should work. And you should see the new users show up in your Firebase console if you hit refresh, this refresh button. Now for the assignment, you have to continue working on this. I want you to add some Java docs comments to each method describing what it does. And then I'll maybe simplify the codes. We added a lot of toast calls and a lot of log calls. It makes it kind of complicated. So maybe just clear out a lot of debugging so you can just see it, what it's at if you want. So. And again, add comments to any lines where you're not sure what it does. Do it the best you can. And then finally make some diagram or visual representation now. See if you can understand how all these methods work together with Firebase. When are each one called? There are UML diagrams, like a UML sequence diagram you could certainly use in this case if you want, or any sort of diagram if you just want a flowchart or anything else, do it. You can do it in any sort of diagramming software. And submit a image of it. You can do it on pen and paper and just send me a picture, but I want you to think about how this is worked visually. Now we're not going to add Google authentication with this right now, but you can if you want. There's a button for Google here, and so you can look at adding that. We've got a Google sign-in method here, and that's already tied to the Google button. So when you click on the Google button, we log Google login and we call the Google sign-in method here. Now to do that, you'd have to look at the Firebase authentication steps, and the next step is the Google sign-in. So you can do that. I would suggest if everything really went really smoothly and you found this really easy, I'd try the Google authentication. It's common for students to have problems, and so if you get stuck in a couple ways and this takes you more time than you want, don't go on with the Google authentication. But again, with the Google authentication, there's a sign-in. Ours is called not just sign in, but Google sign in. So paste this code in there for that. It calls the Google stuff and it needs a separate routine. It starts an activity for result. If you remember when we do activities, external intents, we call that intent and it returns the value with the result, and then we need this on activity result method to get the result back, and then we show things are tied in. And again, you can work with modifying some of this tag stuff here. And again, where you can also update the status to show that you're logged in with Google. You're also. So feel free to look at that and see if you want to work with those steps. There's lots of little moving parts here, so feel free to email me, call me if you have any issues.